He kissed his ex at the party and walked out without a word, so I made sure it was the last mistake he'd ever make. My name is Sophia Loren and I don't believe in tears. I believe in revenge. By the time I was done, his empire was ashes, his mistress was in handcuffs, and the man who thought he could humiliate me was bankrupt, begging at my door. This isn't a story about heartbreak. It's a lesson in what happens when you betray the woman who built you. The champagne flute in my hand was cold, just like the smile I kept perfectly in place as I watched him. Daniel. My husband of 7 years. The man I had built an empire with. The man who had sworn in front of 500 guests at our wedding that he would never love anyone the way he loved me. And yet there he was, across the crowded ballroom, his hand lingering on her waist. Cassandra. His college sweetheart. The one he swore meant nothing to him anymore. I took a slow sip of champagne, the bubbles sharp against my tongue. The party swirled around me. Laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of wealthy people discussing wealthier things. No one noticed the way my fingers tightened around the glass. No one saw the way my pulse remained steady, controlled, even as my husband leaned in and kissed her. Not a polite, friendly peck. A real kiss. Hungry. The kind that left no room for excuses. And then, without so much as a glance in my direction, he walked out of the party with her. Just like that. The whispers started immediately. I felt the weight of stares, the pitying glances. Poor Sophia. Did you see that? Her husband just. I set my glass down on a passing tray, smoothed my emerald green dress, and walked out, not in tears, not in rage, but with the same calculated calm I had used to dismantle competitors in boardrooms. Because Daniel had just made the last mistake of his life, and I was going to enjoy every second of his downfall. The cold night air bit at my skin as I stepped outside the ballroom, but I barely felt it. My mind was already working, dissecting the scene I had just witnessed like a surgeon cutting into flesh, precise, methodical, utterly detached. Daniel thought he could humiliate me. He thought he could walk out on me in front of half the city's elite and suffer no consequences. He was wrong. I didn't go home. The penthouse, my penthouse bought with my money, decorated with my taste, would reek of his betrayal tonight. Instead, I slid into the driver's seat of my car, the leather seat cool against my back, and pulled out my phone. A single text. It's time. The response was immediate. Understood. I drove through the city, the neon lights blurring past the windows, my reflection flickering in the glass. I didn't need to look at a map. I knew exactly where I was going. A discreet office building downtown, one Daniel had never stepped foot in. One he didn't even know existed. The elevator ride up was silent. The doors opened to a dimly lit space, all sleek black furniture and glass walls overlooking the skyline. My private office. My sanctuary. My war room. I didn't bother with the lights. The glow from the city below was enough. I walked straight to the filing cabinet, unlocked it with a key I kept on a chain around my neck, and pulled out a thick folder. Inside, every financial move Daniel had ever made. Every loan he'd taken out. Every investor he'd sweet-talked. Every corner he'd cut. I had known for years he was reckless. Arrogant. Too sure of his own charm to ever think he'd face consequences. And I had made sure to keep records of it all. I flipped open my laptop, typed in a password, and pulled up a spreadsheet, one I had been updating for years. A list of names. Contacts. People who owed me favors. People who would listen when I called. I picked up the phone. The first call was to Richard Langford, Daniel's biggest investor. The man who had poured millions into his latest venture. The man whose wife I had helped through a very discreet, very expensive divorce scandal 3 years ago. He answered on the second ring. Sophia, he said, voice wary. It's late. I know, I said, leaning back in my chair. But I thought you'd want to know something before the markets open tomorrow. Pause. Then slowly, what is it? I smiled. Pull out of Daniel's project. Now. By 9:15 a.m. the first wave hit. I sat in my office watching the Bloomberg terminal I kept on my secondary screen. The stock ticker for Loren Holdings blinked once, twice, then plummeted. A 12% drop in the first 15 minutes of trading. Beautiful. My phone buzzed. Once, twice, then in rapid succession as Daniel's panic set in. I ignored it. Instead, I picked up the sleek black landline on my desk and dialed another number. Bank of Zurich, Private Client Services. A smooth voice answered. Klaus, I said. Execute Clause 7b. Pause. Then the faintest exhale of understanding. The Loron accounts? All of them. Another drop on the screen. 18% now. I had spent years ensuring Daniel's empire was built on quicksand. Every loan he took, every line of credit he opened, I'd made sure the strings led back to me. The offshore accounts in Zurich? My signature was on the backup guarantor documents. The venture capital from Shanghai? The repayment triggers were tied to performance metrics I controlled. And now, with 3 phone calls, I was pulling every single one. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Loron is in the lobby. He's demanding to see you. I checked my watch. 9:47 a.m. Faster than I'd expected. Let him wait, I said. The screen flashed red, 25% down. News alerts began popping up. Loron Holdings in free fall. Major investors withdrawing. Rumors of liquidity crisis. I poured myself a cup of jasmine tea, the expensive kind Daniel always mocked, and watched the numbers keep falling. At 10:30 I finally told security to send him up. The door burst open before the elevator even finished dinging. Daniel looked like he'd aged a decade overnight. His tie was loose, his hair disheveled, his usually tan face pale beneath the stubble. What the hell is happening? He demanded. I took a slow sip of tea. The market appears to be correcting itself. Don't play stupid. He slammed his hands on my desk. Langford pulled out. The Shanghai group just called in their note. The bank is exercising its rights, I finished. As they're entitled to. His eyes narrowed. You did this. I set down my cup with deliberate calm. You walked out of the Carlton ball with Cassandra Thorne on your arm. You kissed her in front of 300 people. You humiliated me. A smile. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? For the first time in our marriage, I saw real fear in his eyes. The Bloomberg terminal beeped. 30% down. Somewhere in the building a phone rang. The first lawsuit had just been filed. I crossed my legs and leaned back. You should call your lawyers, Daniel. You're going to need them. By noon the vultures were circling. I watched from my office window as the first news vans pulled up outside Loron Holdings headquarters. The ticker now showed a 42% free fall. My phone had been vibrating non-stop for hours. Reporters, board members, so-called friends suddenly very concerned about my well-being. I silenced them all. There was only one call I took. Sophia, came the familiar gravelly voice of Martin Voss, the best corporate litigator on the eastern seaboard. The paperwork is filed. I traced a finger along the window glass. And he never read the fine print. Martin's chuckle was dark. Not a single clause in 12 years of marriage. The intellectual property assignments, the property deeds, even the damn prenup, he just signed where you told him to. I closed my eyes. I could still see Daniel at our wedding, laughing as he scrawled his name across document after document. You're the brains, darling, he'd said, kissing my temple. I just make things pretty. Now his signature would bury him. Execute phase 2, I said. At 2:17 p.m. the first subpoena was served. Daniel called me 17 times between 2:30 and 3 o'clock. On the 18th try I answered. His voice was raw. Sophia, you need to. No, I interrupted. You need to check your email. The line went silent as he presumably pulled up the attachment I'd had Martin send. The deed to our Nantucket estate. The one Daniel thought was in his name. The LLC paperwork showing I'd transferred ownership 6 months ago. The prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause, highlighted in yellow. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. You've been planning this. I watched a deposition notice pop up on my screen from one of my venture funds. I've been protecting myself. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the background I heard his assistant crying. Come home, he whispered. We'll fix this. I looked at the divorce petition open on my laptop, already signed in crisp black ink. I am home, I said and hung up. At 5 p.m. sharp, the NYSE suspended trading of Loron Holdings stock. By 5:30, the first forensic accountants were going through Daniel's books. And at exactly 6 o'clock, as the sun set over the city I now fully controlled, my phone buzzed with a text from Cassandra Thorne. "We need to talk." I smiled and typed back, "No. But your husband might." Then I pressed send on the email containing every compromising photo, every offshore transfer, every dirty secret of hers I'd been collecting since college. The game wasn't over yet. But Daniel had already lost. The morning headlines screamed in bold black ink, "Loron Empire in ruins." I sat at my breakfast nook, steam curling from my espresso as I flicked through the papers with detached amusement. Page 5 held the real gem, a grainy photo of Daniel leaving a courthouse, his tailored suit rumpled, eyes bloodshot. The caption read, "Disgraced CO served with restraining order." My restraining order. The doorbell rang. I didn't bother checking the monitor. I knew who it would be. Daniel looked worse in person. His designer stubble had grown into a patchy beard, and the acrid scent of cheap whiskey clung to him like cologne. His once immaculate shirt was missing a button. "Please," he croaked. I leaned against the doorway, silk robe cinched tight. "You're trespassing." They froze my accounts. His hands trembled. "The board voted me out." His voice cracked. "Our friends won't return my calls." I took a slow sip of espresso. Funny how loyalty evaporates when the money dries up. A muscle twitched in his jaw. "You set this whole thing up." "No, darling." I set my cup down with a sharp click. "I simply stopped cleaning up your messes." The wind carried the sound of approaching cameras. Paparazzi had spotted him. Daniel flinched at the first flashbulb pop. "You have 5 seconds to leave," I murmured. "Or I call security and let the cameras catch you being dragged off in handcuffs." His eyes darted to the hallway behind me, to the life he'd thrown away. For a heartbeat, I saw the man I'd married flicker behind his desperation. Then it was gone. As he turned, I called after him, "The divorce papers are on your lawyer's desk. Sign them." The cameras exploded in a frenzy as he stumbled down the driveway. I closed the door gently, my reflection smiling back at me from the polished brass numbers. 414. Our old penthouse number. His final humiliation. My phone buzzed. "Martin. Cassandra's husband just filed for divorce. She's been served with fraud charges." I texted back one word. "Good." Then I walked to my study and opened the safe. Inside lay a single unmarked file, the one contingency I'd never needed. Till now. The tab read simply, "Daniel, final." Rain lashed against the penthouse windows like 1,000 tiny knives. A year to the day since the Carlton ball. Since his betrayal. Since I began carving my pound of flesh from his crumbling empire. The intercom buzzed. "Miss Loron," the doorman's voice crackled. "There's a gentleman here to see you." The pause told me everything. I checked the security monitor. The image made my lips curl. Daniel stood hunched in the lobby, his once $5000 coat soaked through, his hollow cheeks shadowed under the fluorescent lights. The golden boy reduced to this, a beggar at my door. Send him up. The elevator ride took 37 seconds. I counted each one, standing motionless in the foyer. When the doors opened, the stench of cheap motel soap and defeat hit me before he did. "Sophia." His voice was raw, broken. I didn't offer him a towel. Didn't invite him in. Just let him stand there dripping on the marble floor I'd chosen because it looked like ice. "You look terrible," I said. A shudder ran through him. "They took everything." "Not everything." I stepped closer, close enough to see the nicotine stains on his fingers. "You still have your health. For now." His bloodshot eyes widened. I walked to the console table, opened the lacquered box where I kept my cigarettes. Lit one slowly, watching the flame dance. "The SEC investigation wraps next week. Your lawyer, what's left of him, says you're facing 12 counts of fraud." I didn't. The emails say otherwise. I blew smoke toward the ceiling. "The ones you signed. The ones you sent from your account." His knees buckled. He caught himself on the doorframe. "Please. I'll sign anything. The divorce, the..." "Oh, Daniel." I tapped ash into a crystal tray. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. You just never checked your mail. The truth hit him like a physical blow. He sank to his knees, rainwater pooling around him. What do you want? I took one last drag before crushing the cigarette out. I wanted you to understand. I crouched until we were eye level, close enough to see the broken capillaries in his nose. When you walked out of that ballroom with her, you weren't just leaving me. You were abandoning the woman who made you. The woman who allowed you to play king. I stood smoothing my skirt. Now get out. He didn't beg. Didn't scream. Just crawled backward into the elevator like a wounded animal. As the doors closed, I saw his mouth form two silent words. I'm sorry. Too little. Too late. I turned back to the window, to the storm raging over the city I now owned outright. Somewhere out there, Cassandra was destitute. Daniel's former partners were scrambling. And I poured myself a glass of 1945 Chateau Mouton Rothschild, the bottle he'd been saving for his imaginary comeback. The first sip tasted like victory. The second, like ashes. The knock came at midnight. I wasn't sleeping. I never slept these days, not when there was still work to be done. The penthouse was silent except for the steady hum of the city below and the quiet click of my heels against hardwood as I crossed to the door. I didn't need to check the monitor. I already knew who it was. Daniel stood on the other side, swaying slightly, the acrid stench of whiskey and cheap motel soap clinging to him like a second skin. His once immaculate hands were rough now, nails bitten to the quick, fingers trembling around a manila envelope. You came back, I said, leaning against the doorframe. He flinched at the sound of my voice. I didn't know where else to go. I let the silence stretch between us, let him squirm in it before stepping aside. Come in. The penthouse was exactly as he remembered it. Cold, pristine, untouched by time. His gaze flickered over the furniture, the art, the half-empty wineglass I'd left on the side table. His throat worked as he swallowed. I brought you something, he said, holding out the envelope. I didn't take it. What is it? Everything. His voice cracked. The last of what I have. Bank statements. Property deeds. Passwords. He swallowed again, harder this time. It's yours. All of it. Just what, Daniel? I tilted my head. Just forgive you. Just pretend none of this happened. His jaw clenched. Just tell me what you want from me. I smiled. Then I took the envelope from his hands and walked to the fireplace. His breath hitched as I tossed it into the flames. I don't want your money, I said, watching the edges curl and blacken. I don't want your properties. I don't want your apologies. I turned back to him, the firelight casting long shadows across my face. I wanted you to understand what it felt like. His hands balled into fists at his sides. I understand. No. My voice was soft. You don't. I stepped closer, close enough to see the way his pupils dilated, the way his breath quickened. He still reacted to me even now. Even after everything. Tell me, Daniel, I murmured. When was the last time someone looked at you with respect? He flinched. When was the last time someone feared you? I reached out, trailing a single finger down the side of his face. He shuddered. When was the last time you felt powerful? His breath came faster now, ragged. Sophia. I could give that back to you, I whispered. His eyes snapped to mine. I let my hand drop. But I won't. The fire crackled behind me, the last of the envelope turning to ash. Daniel's face twisted. Grief, rage, desperation. For a second I thought he might lunge for me. Might try to take back what little he had left. Instead he turned on his heel and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the silence. Then I picked up my wineglass and took a slow sip. Outside the storm raged on. And I was just getting started. 3 weeks after Daniel's midnight visit, the first subpoena arrived at my office. I turned the thick envelope over in my hands, tracing the embossed seal of the Securities and Exchange Commission with my thumb. They wanted testimony, documents, a full accounting of every financial transaction connected to Loron Holdings over the past 5 years. I smiled and dropped it into the shredder. My assistant, Elena, hovered in the doorway, her tablet clutched tight against her chest. They've scheduled a deposition for next Thursday. Cancel it. But. I looked up. She froze. Tell them I'm traveling. I turned back to my computer screen where Daniel's frozen bank accounts glowed in neat rows. Indefinitely. Elena swallowed hard and nodded. The truth was I hadn't left the city in months. I'd been right here in this glass-walled office high above Manhattan, pulling strings so fine even the spiders couldn't see them. Every asset Daniel thought he'd hidden. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the vintage car collection stored under an alias in Switzerland, I'd systematically dismantled them all. Now only one thing remained. I waited until Elena closed the door before dialing the number I'd memorized years ago. A man answered on the first ring. It's done. Almost. I watched rain streak down the windows. Is he watching? Pause. Then, right now. Good. I opened the secure file on my desktop. A single keystroke would transfer the last of Daniel's hidden funds, every emergency dollar he'd squirreled away, into a numbered account in the Caymans. An account he'd never access. My finger hovered over the enter key. Outside, the storm mirrored the one from the night Daniel had come begging. Lightning flickered over the skyline. Somewhere across town he was probably sitting in some rented room, staring at a laptop screen, watching the last remnants of his empire flicker like a dying heartbeat. I wanted him to see it happen in real time. I pressed the key. The transfer executed instantly. A text came through seconds later. He's screaming. I closed the laptop. Let him scream. The deposition notice could wait. The SEC could wait. The whole damn world could wait. Because this was the part I'd been savoring. The part where Daniel Laurent finally understood what it meant to have nothing. To be nothing. Just like he'd made me feel that night at the Carlton. I poured myself a drink and watched the storm rage on. Somewhere out there my ex-husband was finally learning his final lesson. Never underestimate a woman who built your kingdom. Especially when she decides to burn it down. The phone rang at 3:17 a.m. I knew before looking it would be the private investigator. Only 2 people had this number and Daniel had stopped calling months ago. He's at the Roosevelt Hotel, the rough voice said without greeting. Room 1214. Paid for the week in cash. I sat up in bed, silk sheets pooling at my waist. Alone. Pause. Paper rustling. Had a visitor earlier. Female, late 20s, blonde. Cassandra. Of course. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan's glittering skyline stretching before me. The Roosevelt was barely 6 blocks away. Close enough that Daniel could probably see the outline of my penthouse from his window if he tried. Keep watching him, I said. The investigator hesitated. Ma'am, with respect. The man's finished. What more do you want from him? I watched my reflection smile in the glass. Everything. By dawn, I'd reviewed every transaction from Daniel's last remaining account. Pathetic withdrawals at liquor stores. A single desperate call to his long-estranged father. And then, there. A $5,000 transfer to Cassandra Thorne. Dated yesterday. I tapped the screen, pulling up her financials. The money was already gone. Moved through 3 shell corporations before disappearing into an account in Cyprus. Just like I'd taught her. My fingers flew across the keyboard, freezing the Cyprus account with 3 keystrokes. A notification popped up immediately. Transaction halted. Pending fraud investigation. I sat back, sipping my espresso. Daniel had always been predictable. And Cassandra? She'd never been as clever as she thought. The intercom buzzed. Elena's voice. Your 8 a.m. is here. I checked the security feed. Martin Voss stood in the lobby, briefcase in hand, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Perfect. They're working together, Martin said the moment the elevator doors closed. He pulled out a file, grainy photos of Daniel and Cassandra meeting in a diner. She's got him convinced he can still recover assets. I flipped through the images. Daniel's hollow cheeks. Cassandra's too bright smile. The way her fingers lingered on his wrist in the third photo. I slid the file back. What does he think he can recover? Martin hesitated. The Singapore fund. I laughed. The Singapore account had never existed. Just another phantom I'd let Daniel believe was real. A final carrot to keep him chasing his own tail. Martin wiped sweat from his brow. Sophia, the SEC deposition. We'll wait, I finished. I walked to the window staring toward the Roosevelt. Somewhere in that crumbling hotel, Daniel was probably staring at his laptop right now, desperately refreshing the Singapore account login page. Watching. Waiting. Believing. Just like always. I turned back to Martin. File the motion to seize his remaining assets. Today. As the lawyer left, I opened my laptop and typed a single command, creating a new transaction in the Singapore account. A $2 million pending transfer. Enough to keep Daniel hoping. Enough to make him stay. The puppet strings were still in my hands. And this show wasn't over yet. The Singapore notification hit Daniel's burner phone at precisely 9:15 p.m. I knew because I'd programmed the alert myself. A phantom wire transfer confirmation for $2,003,716.42, complete with a fabricated HSBC reference number. The sort of detail only a desperate man would fail to verify. My surveillance team's text came 37 seconds later. Target is mobile. Heading east on foot. I watched from the back of a chauffeured town car as Daniel stumbled out of the Roosevelt service entrance. His once impeccable coat hung loose on his frame, collar turned up against the autumn chill. He kept checking his phone like it might disappear, nearly colliding with a bike messenger as he hurried toward Park Avenue. Follow him, I murmured. The car slid forward silently. Daniel led us to a crumbling walk-up in the East Village. The kind of place he would have called a rat trap in his former life. Cassandra was waiting under the flickering hallway light, her designer heels looking absurd against the peeling linoleum. I adjusted the audio feed from the listening device planted in her purse. Need to move fast, she was saying as Daniel reached the fourth-floor landing. The transfer clears at midnight Singapore time. Daniel's breathing was ragged. You're sure? Of course I'm sure. Cassandra's laugh was too sharp. I've still got friends at HSBC, remember? I smiled, tapping my phone to activate another sequence. Across the city, 3 shell company accounts began emptying in rapid succession, all traced to aliases Cassandra had used before. Let them dig their grave a little deeper. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with an alert from the Cayman account. An attempted login. I approved it remotely. The screen filled with real-time keystrokes as Daniel typed. Password. Cassandra 2023. Predictable. I watched them drain the account. $327,000 vanished into a new series of shell corporations. The digital breadcrumbs would lead investigators on a merry chase through 6 countries before dead-ending at a cryptocurrency wallet registered to Cassandra's maiden name. My fingers danced across the keyboard, triggering one final command. Account frozen. Suspicious activity alert sent to SEC Cybercrimes Division. The trap snapped shut. Dawn found me at my desk reviewing the fallout. Cassandra's frantic 3 a.m. call to her divorce lawyer. Daniel's increasingly desperate searches for flights to non-extradition countries. The first subpoena hitting Cassandra's doorstep just as the coffee finished brewing. I sipped my espresso, watching the sun rise over a city that no longer had room for either of them. The game wasn't chess anymore. It was spider and fly. And my web was just getting stickier. The knock came at 5:03 a.m. I was already awake, watching the live feed from the security camera outside Cassandra's apartment. The federal agents moved with military precision. 3 at the front door, 2 covering the fire escape, their FBI windbreakers stark against the pre-dawn gloom. My phone vibrated with a text from the investigator. They picked up Laurent first. Singing like a canary already. I muted the video feed before the agents kicked in the door. Some symphonies didn't need an audience. The courthouse steps swarmed with reporters by noon. I watched from the back of a tinted town car as marshals led Cassandra out in handcuffs, her perfect blonde hair now a tangled mess. She squinted against the flashbulbs, her $1,000 blouse wrinkled from a night in holding. Fraud charges. I asked Martin as he slid into the seat beside me. Wire fraud, conspiracy, 4 counts of money laundering. He handed me a tablet showing the indictment. She thought moving money through Cyprus would protect her. Didn't realize you'd already flagged those accounts. I scrolled through the document. Every transaction meticulously documented. Every shell corporation traced. A prosecutor's dream. And Daniel. Martin's smile was all teeth. Rolled on her before they finished reading his Miranda rights. The car pulled away just as Cassandra's lawyer started shouting about entrapment. That evening I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse, a tumbler of 30-year Macallan in hand. The city lights twinkled like stars fallen to earth. My phone rang. Unknown caller. I answered. Silence. Then ragged breathing. Sophia. Daniel's voice was raw. They're giving me immunity. For testifying against her. I swirled the amber liquid. I know. Pause. Then quieter. Did you arrange that? Ice clinked against crystal as I took a sip. Good night, Daniel. The line went dead. Outside, a storm gathered over the skyline. The kind that washes everything clean. The rain fell in silver sheets the morning of Cassandra's sentencing. I dressed with deliberate care. Charcoal Prada suit, diamond studs that caught the light like frost. The same emerald green heels I'd worn the night this began. The courtroom smelled of lemon polish and desperation. Daniel sat hunched in the witness section, his once confident posture collapsed in on itself. He didn't turn when I took my seat in the back row. Cassandra entered in an orange jumpsuit, her shackles clinking with every step. When she saw me, her eyes flashed with something almost like understanding. The judge read the verdict, 27 months in federal prison. A gasp went through the gallery. I simply stood and walked out. Daniel caught me on the courthouse steps. Was this always the plan? His breath fogged in the cold air. I adjusted my gloves. Which part? All of it. His voice broke. The accounts. The investigation. Turning me against her. Rain dripped from the courthouse eaves between us. I stepped closer, close enough to see the broken capillaries in his nose, the tremor in his hands. You kissed her first, Daniel. Then I walked past him into the waiting town car. That night, I poured a glass of the Chateau Margaux we'd been saving for our 10th anniversary. The television played muted footage of Cassandra being led to a prison van. My phone buzzed, a notification from the SEC. Case closed. I toasted my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Checkmate.